So, hello everybody. Thanks for joining. And yeah, I will speak in English. Unfortunately, I still cannot do it in Japanese, but I will try to speak slowly. And there is a friend of mine, Chris, who will try to put some summary in the chat so you can follow what I'm talking from what is written in the chat in Japanese. So my name is Mesut, and I'm a test automation engineer. And in this talk, I want to a little bit talk about difficulties, challenges of the test automation. Because test automation is very important. We try to automate our test cases, but there are a lot of difficulties, right? Sometimes automating test cases, implementation, developing test code is difficult. There are too many difficulties. So let's discuss about them and let's see what kind of difficulties we can have. So I'm leaving some socials here. Please feel free to reach out to me. I heard that there will be no Q&A in this session, but if you have any questions, please reach out. I'm active over LinkedIn or X, and I'm one of the organizers of the Tokyo Test Fest. So in any way, email, X, whatever, you can reach out for your questions. So first of all, I said automation is very important, right? Nowadays, we try to automate our test cases. Why? Because automation is faster than manual testing. Like if I implement my test case, if I execute it, then probably it will complete in a very short time, like maybe 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, right? But if I try to do it manually, maybe it will take 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. It will be slower. So automation is faster. And of course, it improves the coverage. Like I can do test data-driven execution. So I can pass a lot of test inputs and I can improve the coverage. If I try to do this manually, it will be too difficult. I will spend a lot of time. I will spend a lot of effort. Sometimes we don't have too much time, right? Time is very precious. And of course, resources are limited. Like I cannot assign manual test execution tasks to a lot of people because our teams are very limited capacity and we don't have too many resources. So automation is fast and automation is easier, we can say. This is great, right? But this is the bright side of the medallion. Although automation is great, it's awesome, there are several difficulties. So let's start discussing them. First, maybe you know this comics, there's a customer explaining some requirements, and then the business team understands something, the marketing team announce something else, and here we see on the left down corner, documentation. Most of the time, we don't have any documentation, right? As a tester, I need some documentation because I need the expected results, right? I will compare actual results with the expected results, but I don't know the expected result. I don't have the documentation. So the key point here is working closely with the developers. So as the QA team, as the QA engineers, we need good communication skills and we need a good relationship with the developers, not only the developers, but also the product team, product managers, product owners, so that we can understand what is being implemented, what is being developed. Because if I'm not working closely with the developers, maybe I don't know what they are developing, right? Because if I'm isolated, if QA team doesn't have any relation with the developers, if you just rely on the documents, most of the time you will not find any document. So this is not only a challenge of automation, but in general, a good principle to conduct our QA activities and the tasks, building strong relations and the communication channels between the development teams and all the other people we are working together. So communication skills is the first key. Let's move on. There might be some difficulties from the product itself. Like we are testing a lot of products, right? There is the system under test. System under test can be a complex or complicated product. It might be an API, it might be a UI, and most of the time, there are some difficult features that we try to test. Yes, SUT, system under test, yes. So what kind of testability issues? Like if there is something difficult to test, we call it as testability. It's not very easy to test. For example, what might be such a feature? Like if I have a token, password, or secret, which has an expiration date, it has an expiry date. Let's suppose it will expire in 2 weeks, 14 days. So how can I automate this test case? I will create the token, and should I wait 2 weeks to see if it is expiring? I cannot wait for 2 weeks, right? So normally there is a testability issue here. But what I can do is just for testing purposes, not for the production, but only for the testing purposes, I can decrease the expiry date, like maybe not 2 weeks, but 2 hours, or maybe 1 hour, or maybe 2 minutes, let's say 2 minutes. So I can automate my test case, and after I create the token, after 2 minutes, I can check if it is expired or not. So again, the key point is working together with developers. If we need anything else, we can ask. I have a testability issue. Please change the configuration. Or please implement me another API, another interface, because I need that for testing purposes. So Mark, thank you so much. I'm seeing you are putting a lot of comments, so thanks for that. It helps a lot. And by the way, if I'm going very fast, please let me know. I can a little bit slow down. So another challenge, another difficulty. If we are testing hardware, not only software, but also hardware, like robots. For example, I was working for a robotics company, and I was testing robots. They were moving around, AMRs, autonomous mobile robots. So how I can automate test cases? Automating hardware is very difficult. So what I can do is, maybe I can prepare some simulation environments. Like if I'm doing a robot testing, I can build some, I will type in chat, ROS, which is Robot Automating System. So this is an example, but there might be several other simulation environments I can build so that I can generate, I can simulate the signals coming from the hardware modules. So it will help me to automate, even if I have a hardware, I'm having this simulation, right? So as if I have the hardware, the signal is coming from the hardware module. So I can still automate my test cases. Moving on, AI. AI is a very, very hot topic, right? AI or machine learning, ML, or LLM, large language models. So these kind of things are hot topics, right? We see AI everywhere. If we watch movies on some platforms, if we read articles, if we search for articles, we see AI everywhere. If we listen to music, we see AI is running and it is recommending something. So this is one example from the company that I'm working for. I'm working for Indeed.com, which is a company of Recruit Holdings. So we have some job boards. So we are searching for jobs, and I put a query like test engineers in Tokyo, for example. This is a query, right? So the system provides me some similar recommendations, like maybe not QA engineer, but maybe test engineer, or like QA tester, those kind of similar or relevant queries. So how can I ensure that the ML, machine learning algorithm, is working very fine, working very well or accurate? So how can I be sure that the accuracy is in a good level? So functional testing is not enough for doing that, right? Not only functional test. Again, I'm putting in the chats. Not only functional tests, but running some other tests, like maybe some experiments or different types of tests I can do to support my automation. So now the key point here is automation itself sometimes is not enough. We are discussing the challenges of automation and how to improve it, but sometimes we will need something else to support automation. I will come to this point and explain some other types of tests. It is not only functional tests. But let's see what other types of tests I can do. There are several types of non-functional tests. What are the non-functional tests? For example, performance tests. There are different types of performance tests like stress testing or longevity testing, load testing. These are all types of performance tests. What else? Performance test or security tests, right? Security. Or there are lots of different abilities, like maintainability, recoverability, usability, portability, scalability, lots of different abilities. But now I will try to highlight the usability. Usability is very important, especially in terms of quality. Why? Because when we are talking about usability, we are talking about the users, right? Usability means user friendliness and how users can easily use the system. Usability, is it usable or not? So now let's discuss from the test automation point of view. How can I ensure usability is my product is usable? My product usability is good. I'm sorry, I was putting the chat only to panelists, by the way. So now I mark to everyone. So sorry about that. And how I can ensure the usability? For example, if there in any error case, if there is a pop-up window, for example, there is an alert, I can automate this test case, right? I can use a UI test case, and I can ensure that the pop-up window is there. But how about the message on the pop-up window? Like we can see this example, right? Unknown error, unknown error. So what? It's not helpful to me. So the error message should be helpful. It should help me to understand what is wrong. Error message, but what error? What did I do wrong? And how can I correct this situation, fix this situation? So in this regard, automation tests will still not be enough. We need some other tests types. For example, what? For example, exploratory testing, right? Exploratory testing is a type of manual testing. So in this way, we can figure out the positive scenarios, negative scenarios. Like whenever I do a edge case, corner case, whenever I have an error scenario, I can read the error message. And as a human, I can judge if the message is helpful or not. So this is, we are always discussing, right? All the conferences, all the events, we always discuss if robots, if machine learning will replace our jobs. Will we lose our jobs to the machines? Because AI is coming, machine learning is coming. They can do a lot of things, right? When you ask something to ChatGPT, it can develop code, and it can develop very good code actually. So can we lose our job to the machines? So actually, this is the answer. Machines can do a lot of coding, a lot of testing, but they don't have a sense of human. They cannot judge the feeling. So as humans, we have the feeling, and we can have a sense of or the understanding of the product and the quality. These machines can or will never achieve. This is why our test is secure, at least for the moment. We don't know what will happen in the future, but as of now, this is what machines cannot achieve, and we should do as a human. Moving on. So we discussed several difficulties from the environments that we are working, right? We discussed about agile working. So there are a lot of changes, and there is lack of documentation. This is the first thing we discussed. What was the other things we discussed? There were some things from the product perspective, right? For example, if there is a hardware in the product, not only software, but if there is hardware, this was another challenge. Or if there is some AI modules in the software that we are developing, that was another challenge. Or sometimes even the complexity or the complicated structure of the product was challenging. And finally, we discussed the non-functional quality aspects. So we discussed three major categories. Now, testing itself. So we discussed several difficulties from different perspectives. And now, how about the testing itself? Sometimes testing itself is also very difficult. Let me give you some examples. I'm giving this talk with some real life examples. For example, on this slide, I want to give another example in which I was trying to test a tenant contact system. So every tenant should be informed by the system with an email. So I was sending emails to different tenants. So what I can do is I can create an account and I can send the email, and I can automate this scenario. I can log in to the email account. I can see if the email is there. But what if I'm trying to automate this and run hundreds or thousands of times? So I cannot log in to each individual email account because it needs physical interaction. I have to put a verification code just after I create. So I cannot do that. But what I did is I set up an email relay. Let me type it in the chat. So email relay was collecting all the emails and forwarding it to only one single account. So forward all emails to a single account. So in this way, what I can do is I don't have to go and log in all the individual accounts, right? But I can go only a single account. This helps me. In this way, I can automate. But instead of, for this purpose, for setting up the email relay, I had to use AWS and some other cloud services. So even preparing the environment was very difficult. So my key point at this slide is not only the implementation, but even preparing the test environment. I still didn't start the implementation, right? I'm still trying to prepare the environment. And after I prepare this, I can start my testing. Even this was very difficult. So the key point here is, please take this into account. Please be aware that there will be some effort needed to prepare your environment. Otherwise, you might plan you might not plan very properly, and you can fall behind the schedule. And even after we prepare our environment, the implementing the test cases might also be difficult. For example, let's suppose we are testing UIs. UI testing is sometimes annoying, right? Finding the elements, finding the components, figuring out the locators. Sometimes UI testing is really annoying because it requires several locators. And if we use only certain type of locator like XPaths or CSS paths, they can be easily broken. So my recommendation here is maybe do not use only one single type of locators or the selectors, but maybe try to enrich and make your test automation more robust by using different locators, like ID is one of them. But sometimes you will not find the ID, so you can just add the test ID, just for testing purposes again. If you add test ID to your components, then even if the layout changes, because sometimes developers can change the layout, right? Again, we are talking about agile. Being agile means doing a lot of changes, frequent updates, frequent changes. So if you make your test cases robust and reliable, then even if those kind of changes, your test will still work. So we prepared our environments, we implement our test cases. What is next? We will execute, right? So do you know Mr. Bean on this slide? It is a very funny image, right? Sometimes we have to wait a lot. In this image on the slide, Mr. Bean is waiting for something. I think he was waiting for some car on a way, which was not crowded at all. This is very similar. Sometimes we sit in front of our pipelines and it is super slow. Like I wait, and it is still running and I'm still waiting for the results of the test cases. Because I have to see the results. Test results are very important. If tests fail, I will stop the pipeline. I will not merge. Stop the pipeline because tests are failing. There might be some critical points, and I will see if the tests have some real failures or false alarms. But so, in short, I have to wait for the results. But if this waiting time is too long, then it is not acceptable, right? Everyone will start complaining. Like tests are very slow. We are waiting too much for our pipelines to pass because sometimes we need hot fixes. We have to merge our changes very quickly because it might be a hot fix or it might be just a bug fix. So it should be very fast. So if the tests are slowing, then we are slowing down the pipeline. So what we can do is divide your whole set into subsets. So what we can do if we have subsets, we can run all in parallel. So parallelize your test cases, test execution. For example, if you are using some tools like Playwright is a very popular one nowadays. They are doing even automatically. Like if you just set the configuration as parallel run on, there's a configuration off and on. If you set on, it is already doing automatically. In Cypress too, you can do. Or if you are doing the unit testing, you can do some manual configuration. In Selenium too, you can configure that and you can run tests in parallel. So please, but the key idea here is, how can you make your tests running in parallel? Please try to design test cases independent from each other. Sometimes some people asking me a lot of questions like they cannot do parallel runs because all the tests are dependent to each other. Like to be able to run one test case, they have to wait for another one because there are some dependencies. Please try to design your test cases independent from each other. Otherwise, you will have several dependence issues and it will cause a lot of trouble. So, we discussed a lot of difficulties. Let's summarize and see what we can do. Test automation is very important. Nowadays, we try to automate a lot of test cases, but test automation is not a silver bullet. For sure, we need manual testing. For sure, we need exploratory testing. Explore the system. Just walk through. Go over the systems, the subsystems. So manual testing is also very important. But since we are talking about automated testing and test automation, we can find a lot of improvement rooms that we can do on the test automation. For example, we discussed several frequent updates, right? This is agile working. If you accept working in agile, you should accept frequent changes. You should not say no. Changes are always welcome. We accept several changes. But for that, you need strong communication and good relations with the developers. Early QA involvement. Please get involved in the meetings. If developers are having a meeting about the implementation, about the development, QA should also be there. Please do not work in isolated teams. Please build some good relations. Oops, I think
Yeah, screen sharing stopped.
Okay, let me share it again. Okay. I don't know what happened here, but anyways, we can still see. So early QA involvement is a very important key here. And what else? We discussed about testability issues, which is again related to building some good connections and relations with the developers. So as QA engineers, please try to work very closely with the other teams. Next, we discussed about hardware dependency and some other complex features that we are working in the system, like machine learning, AI, right? So on that regard, we discussed on top of the functional testing, running several experiments or building some different simulations. So again, it is not only the functional testing, but running some different testing activities and different types of testing. And similarly, we discussed about some non-functional testing activities, right? For example, usability, recoverability, maintainability, performance, security. So we discussed a lot of non-functional testings as well. What else? We discussed about testing as well. If you know the software testing lifecycle, it starts from it is called software testing lifecycle. It is in the ISTQB alumni as well. So you can see it starts with the requirement analysis, and then we do the test planning. We design, implement, execute, and maintain. This is the software testing lifecycle. On each phase, we have some different challenges, but what we discussed here is for preparing the environment, which is kind of designing the test execution environment, we might have some challenges. And for implementing the test cases, especially we discussed for the UI cases, there might be several challenges. And we can follow different coding practices, and we can follow different patterns to improve our testing. And finally, we discussed about slowly running test cases, right? Slowly running test cases. So what was the proposal? The proposal is running tests in parallel. So that was it. Thank you so much for listening to me. I guess, again, we will not have Q&A here, but I'm very open for feedback. If you have any questions or if you want something to share, please reach out to me in any of these platforms. Thank you so much.